Hey, let's talk about games. Good morning, friend. It's Escher Hydra here. Today I want to be throwing a painting video at you. We're going to be running through how to do the leopard spots and tiger stripes for House Escher's clothery. So what we're going to be doing in this is running through my steps on how and which colours I used, where to put them, and then we're going to talk about some tips and tricks for actually achieving the spots and stripes. I truly believe they're a lot easier than they look. Freehanding is not that difficult once you've got your body position in the right place and a few tips regarding sort of brush management, so hopefully all of you guys are going to find this easy afterwards. Now, do bear in mind, I'm not the best painter in the world, but if you have any tips you feel that I could benefit from, leave them down in the comments, or heck, if you've just got tips in general, leave them down below in the comments. Try and help each other out a little bit. So let's get started. You'll see over here I've put a base layer of XV88 on. It is a fairly thick paint as it is one of the base layers, so a little bit of water mixed in helps a little bit. Spread it around, just make sure you've covered the whole cloth as much as you need. Don't worry about going right the way over the edges. You're going to be using a wash soon, which is going to cover up your mistakes. So moving on from there, we're now going to bring that colour up a little bit with Towel Light Ochre. This is going to give us that nice sort of red effect soon. Just make sure you get that as an even coating. You can apply a little bit of water to this one if you need. A couple of layers if you feel that you're missing anything out as well would be absolutely fine. So moving on from here, we're then going to apply the Fugle Orange wash. Now this will take a little bit longer to dry. Just put a dollop on to begin with and spread it around with your brush. Move it around to all the places you want it, and then I might even recommend treating it like a, treating it like a stir fry. Don't leave it alone for more than a few minutes. Have a little look at it, make sure that wash isn't sort of all sinking down south. I even lay my model down on her side for this when I'm doing one side at a time, just to make sure that that wash doesn't spread too far. Generally though, if you don't have massive dollops, it's not going to go wandering afield too much. Next up from here, we're going to return back to the Towel Ochre, and we're going to just place that again just to bring up the colours a little bit, just to get that sort of tiger colour scheme going on. Moving on from here, we're then going to highlight with a little bit of Ungor flesh, and I don't think you can really pick it up on the camera. It just makes the very, very tips pop slightly. Now, I don't like to water this down too much, and I just want to make sure I've got a tiny amount on my brush. When you first load up a brush, start with the edges where you know you want to apply it. As you get less and less on the brush, then you can maybe do some dry swipes across some of the raised areas, moving up closer to the belt. But make sure you're not doing that with a fresh brush, unless you've dabbed it on a tissue considerably, because the last thing you want to do at this stage is start sort of applying blobs here and there. So that is it in terms of getting yourself ready. We're now actually ready to do the spots. So let's move on to that. So if we have a little check of the painting setup here, you can see I'm making sure I've got my best brush available. By best, I mean the one that's been looked after, doesn't have any straying bristles at the top. Nice and thin for that small detail. We're going to get some Rhinox hide, shake it like a Polaroid picture several times. Just keep shaking it until your arm's tired. That'll probably do. Get a little bit of paint then. Put it down on your palette and rotate the brush. Now, what we're doing with rotating the brush, you want to make sure when you don't have paint, it is nice and thin. Then once you've applied paint to the brush, you want to make sure it's still nice and thin. If the brush is any more plump after you've applied paint, chances are it's going to be too much for the model for this technique in particular. So go back and rotate it a little bit more until it's a little bit smaller. Now, you'll also notice my arm position in this is going to be involving my elbow resting firmly on my lap, my forearm on the table, my wrist on the table, and then my hands are going to be cradling each other. This is increasing the amount of points of contact I've got with stable structures as much as possible. My hands are literally going to be, it's like I'm writing on a sheet of paper. Everything is resting on something. Now, if you can, get a piece of paper and a pen out and draw a tiny little O, then you can do this. It's just a case of setup, getting into the right position. Whatever you can draw on paper with a pen, you can do with this. Now, next tip is just to make sure you're using the tip of the brush only. You really, if you're applying a little bit of pressure with a brush onto the model, no paint is coming off, then you need to reset. You might even need to clean the brush. Sometimes when doing it with very, very small amounts of paint, it can dry a little bit sort of prematurely. Don't worry about that. Just keep washing, brushing, putting a new bit of paint on, putting it on the palette, rolling it again. Take your time. The last thing you want to do is get too much paint on the brush and dollop it on. And hey, if you run out of paint on there and you're just dry humping it, that's not really going to cause any problems, is it? As well as that, guys, just be patient. If you do start out with a new brush load on this, I always start on somewhere on the edge where I know it's going to be really easy to correct. Some of the harder to reach ones, I make sure I do them sort of second or third when the brush is running a little bit lower on paint, because I know something does go wrong. I can really easily touch it up with a little bit of Ungor Flesh or Tau Ochre just to sort of neaten it up. Now, unfortunately, the camera hasn't done a great job of auto-focusing here. This is actually a webcam attached to my hat, but it's managed to work for the sake of showing you guys a sort of rough image. Now, the last tip I've got for this is make sure you're always pulling the brush, and make sure you do not do a circle in one fluid movement. For me anyway, this helped. Try and start from, now I'm a lefty, so I'll be starting from right, pulling it to the left. Most of you right-handed guys will put the brush down and then pull it to your right, okay? So you're pulling it towards your hand. This is just a little bit more of a stable direction of pull. And don't try and then complete the circle by then pushing it to form full circle. Start with a right pull up and left, and then start from the right again and pull down and left. I'll show you with a couple of arrows on the screen here just to make that a little bit clearer. But if you stick to that sort of direction, it's going to be a little bit more reliable. Now let's take a look at the finished product, see what she's looking like. Looking pretty good. If you want to go over any of those fine details, feel free to sort of make some of those circles pop a little bit, but I like them to look a little bit watered and not to have too much contrast. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, share it with your friends if you think it's going to be useful for them, and I'll see you next time. Take care, all the best.